Hello, everyone. This is your host, Susan Rosen, and I again have a very nice, interesting guest on today, and his name is Neil McKinley. And Neil is an embodied meditation teacher, and he will help us to understand a little bit more of what that means. Reflecting his interest in how this work enriches and is enriched by our everyday lives, he runs 2 online communities, which we shall also hear about, I hope, and hosts the, quote, Bringing Meditation to Life, unquote, podcast. A competitor, okay. He lives and works in Victoria, British Columbia, which is a beautiful place, with his wife and daughter. So welcome, Neil, to the Healthy Tips After 50 podcast.
Thank you very much, Susan. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate you agreeing to come on.
Oh, my pleasure.
So let's, I know you and I were already kind of talking a little bit before I turned on the record button, but let's talk a little bit about what embodied meditation means to you and how you're kind of trying to present that to the world.
Yeah. So I think the first thing that a good starting point is to review, what meditation is. And meditation is simply this practice. It's a technique that encourages us to bring our attention, that attention that, if your listeners are anything like me, is always wandering all over the place. Bring that wandering attention and deliberately place it somewhere in a consistent and ongoing manner. And traditionally, people can place their attention on the breath, on a visualization, on a sound if you're doing mantra meditation, on an object like a rock or a candle. And embodied meditation, where we place our attention, is some aspect of embodied experience. So it's the same dynamic that's consistent through all forms of meditation that I'm familiar with. What's unique is that, or distinct, is that when we're placing our attention, we're placing it in some aspect of embodied experience.
Okay. So when you say experience, is that like an experience like I don't know, went to the store or something? I mean, is it that kind of experience, or is it looking for a particular experience that comes from the meditation?
It's literally what's happening for us right now. And so when I say embodied meditation, that's an umbrella term that encompasses what we could call the personal body, what most of us assume or think of when we think of embodiment. It includes the sense body, and it includes the body of the earth. So to bring my attention right now to embodied experience, when I bring my attention to the personal body aspect, there's kind of a tingly, electric, jittery feeling because I'm nervous. When I bring my attention to the sense body, I'm suddenly aware of the cool of the room and the car that just went by outside my window. And when I bring my attention to the earth body, there's a sense of my feet on the floor underneath the seat, my seat touching the seat of the chair, and then this grounded presence underneath and informing that. So it's whatever our immediate experience happens to be in any of those and all of those aspects.
Okay. And so maybe watching or feeling, I don't know what the right word is, how you feel in each of those. And then if you find one that seems particularly powerful or peaceful, does one stay with that for a particular amount of time, or what does one do?
You can simply rest there, let your attention rest, so it's like, I go back to my own example from a few moments ago. I bring my attention to that experience of the personal body, which right now is really vivid again because I'm nervous, and so there's all this physiological experience that happens, and I just let my attention rest with that. And it doesn't necessarily take away the nervousness or all the physiological experiences that go along with it, but it does let me very much settle in to that experience and become more and more familiar with what that aspect of embodied experience or being an alive human is.
Okay. Yeah. So it's not necessarily looking at it and going, okay, now I want to relax the nervousness, or I want to. It's not trying to do something with it. It's just seeing it and acknowledging it.
Yeah, one of my favorite teachings on meditation is simply the Tibetan word for meditation, which is GOM, G-O-M. And GOM means to become familiar with. And I love that. It's like, okay, I can do that. It doesn't mean, getting it right. It doesn't mean not being nervous. It doesn't mean finding something other than nervousness. It means becoming familiar with what's right here. And again, I love that because, okay, I can do that. I can't get rid of the nervousness, but I can familiarize with that experience because it's so vivid right now.
Yeah, I've also heard it described as just noticing it.
Yeah. Yes.
Just noticing what your thoughts are, what your feelings are.
Noticing, and I think it's really helpful to kind of have a large vocabulary so that all of us can, because all of us are going to connect through different words differently, but being with, resting, noticing, witnessing, bearing witness, all of these are terms that point in that direction.
Oh no, absolutely. Yeah, no, and that's that is so important. And it is, having done a lot of different kinds of philosophies and different kinds of meditation over my many years here, they all kind of come down to the same thing, right? They just call it different things.
Yes.
And that's always been so fascinating to me to learn.
I would say for me, it's become fascinating recently. I think in my 20s and maybe my 30s, I was kind of looking for the right word, right? I was looking for the right answer. But as the years go by, I become much more interested in, the different ways, different traditions, and different people articulate that same experience.
Yeah.
And part of the interest is because sometimes people will say things like, I'll be teaching a class and I'll say resting, and someone will say, well, resting doesn't work for me. Here's the word that works for me. And it's like, oh my gosh, that's such a great finger pointing to the experience. And it opens up something for me that I hadn't seen or connected with before. So I'm a recent convert to loving the differing words and definitions and ways of articulating and pointing. Yes.
Well, because I think that one of the things that resonates so much for me, and is something that I've learned just in the past couple of years myself as well, is a recognition that really all of our feelings and all of the way we live our lives, everything actually comes from the inside out. Right? What you are doing is what you're doing. It doesn't, it really doesn't, I don't want to say it doesn't affect me, but it's not, now I'm losing my thought for words, but in essence, it's how I'm feeling creates my experience. How you're feeling is how you're feeling. And you can tell me about it.
Yeah.
And that's great. And I can learn and expand. But things that you do don't really affect me, even though we all run around thinking that it does.
I think not in the way, not in the way we commonly believe. And I think what you're
Yeah.
pointing to is something that comes up again and again in my work, is this recognition that, literally we are actually all unique manifestations of this cosmic moment. I mean,
right.
literally,
Yeah.
each of us is part of this vast web of being, and the web of being has come together in a very particular way for us. And out of that particular way, we've arisen. And there's never been another human or another moment like that before, and there will never again, because the web is so different. And I think that's part of what informs the real delight and joy of hearing people articulate their different understanding of this work we do, because of course it's going to be different. Of course it's going to be different. And to receive that can be, really helpful and affecting. And a reminder that we're all these unique manifestations of this cosmic moment.
That's right. That's right. We're all connected, but we're all independent as well.
Yeah. And
that's in a way. Yeah.
That comes up a lot, been coming up a lot in my teaching lately. And we've been wondering, the group that I work with, we've been wondering whether maybe there's a shift in our awareness to a more connected awareness, a more and awareness, meaning we're not individual and we're not all one. We're both. We're individual and we're all connected as one, which is a really interesting way to understand.
Yes. Yes. Well, and the other thing that I would probably add on to that, which is something that I've, again, with this other understanding that I have, is that we're all okay.
Yeah.
We're all okay, no matter what happens. We're all okay. It's all up in our minds of thinking that we're not. Thinking.
I think it's for me, I think it's another one of those and statements. We're all okay, and there's suffering we can address. Yeah.
No, that's true. Well, and I think the part of that as well is that a lot of the suffering we're causing ourselves.
Yes.
It's not coming from the outside.
Yeah.
Right. It's all in here.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think that's one of the places, one of the things I wonder about in my work all the time is like, okay, meditation, okay, embodied meditation. And then I very quickly get to the place of like, okay, what is the value of this in my everyday life, this embodied meditation? Like, where's the payoff? And I think you're beginning to point in the direction of, one direction of the payoff for me is, one of the things the practice does is begins to help us address that dynamic of the suffering we cause ourselves.
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And I know just, for myself, it's made a huge difference in how I react to things and to how, the other thing that it points to me to, which I think a lot of practices, meditation practices and different things is that there's only the present. And we all, and I know for myself, for my personal experience, that for decades I carried around all my past things. And I should have done this and I should have done that. And so did this to me and so did that to me. All those kinds of things. And I just carried them around.
Yeah.
And it got really heavy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? You're just dragging that shit. And one day it was just like gone. It's like, it doesn't erase the past. There's just an acknowledgement that, hey, it's the past.
Yeah, it's a different relationship in my experience to whether it's something in the distant past or whether it's just something that I've been carrying around for 5 minutes. There's a different relationship to all of that, which allows me to be more present, which lessens the amount of suffering I'm feeling and also makes me more better equipped to actually deal with what I'm dealing with, what needs to be addressed right here and right now.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. Exactly. Because the other side of that as well is that you stop worrying about the future. Because you can't do anything about the future till you get there, right?
Well, Susan, when I get to that point, I'll let you know. I still worry a great deal about the future. The difference is, that I do sometimes recognize that that's what I'm doing. It's like, okay, this isn't actually what's happening right now.
Yes. Well, that's
It's
the
me
same,
worrying about the future.
That's the same. That's exactly the same, right? And it's not necessarily that those things aren't going to happen.
No.
But at the moment, there's not a whole hell of a lot you can do about it. And if you can do something about it, then, for sure, go do it, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. It's for me as well, it's interesting over the years to see all of the different philosophies. I'll just call them philosophies because some are religions, some are, meditation types, and for all of that, of ways of looking at the world. How much it's expanded over the last, I don't know, 10, 20 years from how it used to be, because it used to be very narrow. The majority of people didn't know about meditation. They weren't doing it. They were doing the traditional, maybe it was a religion. I don't know, maybe it was some kind of psychology. I don't know. There were a few big ones out there, right?
Yeah.
But now it's so much more accepted.
Yeah.
And yes, this is, just find one that works for you.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I think back, I think one of the big turning points of it, at least from my perception, was, it was only 50 some years ago when the Beatles got into meditation, and suddenly there was a public awareness of meditation. And
they thought they were a little weird, but it was okay.
A little weird, but it was there. It was kind of like eating yogurt. It's a little bit strange, but then what's happened in the last, as you know, 10, 15, 20 years is there's been a new wave of acceptance where, it, rather than being acknowledged and then noted as weird, it's very much like yogurt again. It's actually becoming more and more mainstream and normalized, and people are meditating, as part of their fitness classes. People are meditating in their workplace. People are meditating in order to be more present and effective as a parent or a partner or a leader or whatever the case might be. And there's been this wonderful wave of awareness and acceptance and engagement that's, come the last little while.
Yes. No, I totally agree. It's, it's so interesting to watch.
And exciting to watch too. I mean, I've had conversations in the last few years about meditation practice that I wouldn't have had 20 years ago. And once those conversations open up, we can actually talk about meditation. Like, okay, what is meditation actually? What are we actually doing when we're meditating? And again, coming back to that $64,000 question, how does this actually benefit me in my everyday life? How does it actually do that? Which, it's great that those doors are opening up, because they need to be open for those conversations to happen.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's and it's always wonderful to see someone that you care about who all of a sudden learns about it. And you see how much better they feel.
It's one of the things I do a fair amount. Pre-COVID, I did a fair amount of in-person teaching here in Victoria. And one stream of that was introductory classes, beginner classes. And it was always really interesting on many levels, but not the least of which was, people coming in, learning how to practice, and then beginning to notice that it was having an effect in their life. I remember, for instance, one person saying, came back to class and said, I went to the dentist and I hate going to the dentist. And I was sitting in the chair waiting for the dentist to come do whatever was going to be done. And my mind was really getting away from me. And at this point, I was like, okay, this is amazing that you're noticing that your mind is really getting away from you. I mean, this is a huge thing right in and of itself.
Wow.
And she said, so I noticed that my mind was getting away from me with fears and concerns and stories I was making up. And I just started paying attention to my breathing. And, it just let me settle down just a little bit, just enough so that I could say to myself, or I could recognize and see, and then say to myself, okay, all those worries are probably not going to happen. And if they do happen, I can deal with it then. But right now, I'm going to pay attention to my breath, and I'm going to settle into this seat, and I'm going to wait for the dentist to come. And I thought that was a brilliant example of how this work can actually help us in our, rubber hits the road everyday life, recognizing what your state of mind is, bringing your attention back to the immediacy of your embodied life, and then accessing these qualities that are waiting for us, one of which is, ease, relaxation, clarity.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a beautiful illustration.
Oh, that's great. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me, you do groups and all this. So what are you doing? Did you move everything online, or you still have some that are in person, or what are you doing?
Yeah, most everything moved online when COVID showed up. We did run an in-person class, a very reduced schedule. I did run 1 or 2 in-person classes for a while, but then I think we started up in the fall of 2020, but then, that was shut down. And so we started a couple of in-person classes in September of this year, September of 2021. Small groups, big rooms, masks, everyone has to be double vaccinated and so on and so forth. But as I said, most of my work has transitioned to online, which has a lot of interesting pluses to it. I'm able to engage with people now all over the world. It doesn't need to be people who are just living in Victoria. And I'm able to engage, or offer a far broader range of resources, because of course, I can do recordings and I can do videos and I can do a podcast and, all these other things. So it's been an interesting couple of years. It's not been an easy couple of years, as the case for many of us, but it's been an interesting couple of years, and making the transition has been, I think, richly affecting for me. And, I'm excited with the formats that we've now come up with, and, curious to see where those go.
Yeah. It's been very interesting to watch. I know of some teachers that I follow who actually, one in particular was online, totally online before COVID. I mean, he had already moved all this stuff online just so he could broaden his reach. So he was really kind of ahead of the game when everything else went online.
I noticed that myself. I wasn't set up to be as online in the way that I am now, but I had a lot of experience with being online, and that experience was really helpful in making the transition. It gave me a skill set that I didn't really know that I had, so that when it came time to figure out what I needed to do, I had some familiarity with what was required and what was helpful, and what worked with meditation online, because it's different than it is in person.
Oh yeah. Oh no, absolutely. And groups versus one-on-one is different, very different as well.
Very different. And yet, there's a kind of delight from it too. One of the things that I say to people, that I really love about the online work is okay, we're not in the same space. That's true. We're not sharing the same physical space when we're doing this online, but there's an intimacy that we don't have an opportunity to access in the person to person. And one way it manifests is just we can see everyone's background. I mean, it's so great to be able to see, okay, this is where this person lives and this is what this person has set up. And, there goes the dog and there goes the cat. It brings it back to that just nitty gritty, everyday life meditation intersection, which I find so rich and so, exciting to engage and immerse in.
Yeah. And it's a whole different energy.
Yes.
I don't think anybody realized or believed that we could get that energy back and forth online that we had sitting in a room with somebody.
Yeah. And again,
right?
it's a great illustration of, how this work might be of benefit is, in my early days online, I was looking for the kind of connection in the online world that I knew from the in-person world. And it took me a while to recognize, and here's this becoming familiar with again, it took me a while to recognize, I have this expectation based on past experience. And that may or may not be true. So what if I just let that be there and pay attention to this Zoom gathering and see what kind of connection arises in this situation? And it was a really helpful, again, it was a helpful example of how meditation can be helpful in our lives, recognizing that expectation, not pushing it away, not getting rid of it, but just loosening my grip, coming back to the present moment, being with everyone as we're on Zoom together and realizing, oh my gosh, there's actually a whole rich world of, energy and connection and affection that can be explored in this format.
Yeah. And I think the other thing it's taught us all is that energy really is, what would be the right word? It's just out there.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to put it. I mean, it's there and we're sending it back and forth, even just you and I now, and whoever watches this.
Yeah.
Right. Afterwards. And it's so interesting because we all thought, oh yeah, energy. Yeah. When I'm sitting across from somebody or whatever. Oh yeah, it's just that energy and seeing them eye to eye, right? All this kind of stuff. But it's like all of a sudden we all realized, oh my God, you could just as well close your eyes and just listen, which I do sometimes. And the energy just comes in, listening to some people talk, and I'm sure you know how this is, and the tone in their voice, they just drop down into this place. And next thing you know, you're in that same place with them.
Yeah. I feel like we're circling back to what we were talking about a few moments ago, is this, and then I'd never connected this with my online experience, but it's a great illustration. I mean, I was kind of getting there a few minutes ago, and now you've kind of brought us right back. That one of the things that comes up for me through the online work is a visceral recognition that we're all individuals and we're all connected. Because I can see and sense the individual when I'm looking at the screen, and I can see and feel that connectedness when I'm sitting here looking at the screen. It's really interesting and affecting. Actually, it's very affecting.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's going to be very, very interesting if and when COVID becomes, like polio or something. I mean, where, it just kind of doesn't go away, but is under control, and it just becomes normal. Right. And so it's going to be really interesting to see what practices continue,
Yeah.
and which ones kind of get left behind as we get back to somewhere in between where we were and where we are now.
Yeah, because it'll necessarily be different, of course. It won't be pre-COVID, it won't be in COVID. And yeah, how are we going to not navigate that? Am I going to continue to do this yoga class online? And maybe my
Right.
default would be like, well, yeah, of course I'll do the yoga class in person. I'm not going to do it online anymore. But then I recognize like, oh, but it fits into my schedule online, and I don't have to travel, and
Yeah.
I actually
Yeah.
like the kind of connection I get. And
Uh-huh.
maybe I will, maybe I won't. But
Yeah.
yeah, we're going to
Yeah.
have this interesting negotiation that we'll all go through with all these new forms that have shown up in the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it really is going to be fascinating. I'm hopefully looking forward to, getting to that point.
Fingers crossed. I mean, what is
Yeah.
it? The yardstick keeps moving, but fingers crossed.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. Exactly. So, okay. So tell me, or, tell my audience that are not here right now, but they will be.
They will be here.
Yep. About some of the different groups or classes or any of those kinds of things that you have going on.
Yeah.
And, we can put the links, I can put the links in the show notes for people.
Yeah. So, I'm in all the usual places, Facebook and Instagram and Insight Timer. My podcast is on Apple and Spotify, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
The main place to go, though, in my opinion, is my website, which is simply neilmckinley.com.
Okay.
And I have a somewhat unusual spelling of the last name. It's McKinlay. Most McKinleys are Leys.
That's
But
right.
I'm an Lay. And
Okay.
you get a sense of everything I'm doing there. There are writings on meditation in everyday life. My podcast, Bringing Meditation to Life, is there. There are guided meditations people can access.
Oh, nice. Yes.
And then there are some paid courses that people can take advantage of. For instance, Introduction to Embodied Meditation courses on there. And then, as you noted, there's a couple of communities that people can take a look at. One is the online gatherings, which is a subscription-based community where we're exploring, bringing meditation into our lives, bringing embodiment into our lives through weekly meetings and recordings and so on and so forth. And then there's this free to join community or network called the Living Meditation Network, which is really intended to offer people, inspiration and support and resources to engage, the practice of meditation in whatever way they feel moved to engage and able to engage the practice. So there's recordings of talks and recordings of practices and reminders of other things that are going on that people can plug into. So the website, neilmckinley.com, is really the main resource, I think.
Okay, kind of a hub.
A hub, that's a great way of putting it. It is the hub of everything. You'll get a sense of pretty much everything there. And so just go and feel free to click and move around because there's a lot there.
It sounds like it. That's great. That's great. It sounds great.
One of the things that's been really interesting about the last 2 years and this move online is actually beginning to gather everything in one place that I'm doing and see, like you said, there's a lot here. And, the inspiration is to offer people, resources, inspiration, and support that meets the realities of their lives and allows them to engage this practice appropriately.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that sounds really interesting. Yeah. It sounds like you have a little something for everybody.
That's the hope. Yeah.
What they're
something
looking
for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of like a smorgasbord.
Okay.
A little
As
bit of
long as
this,
it
a little
doesn't
bit of that.
slop all over the sides.
Well, I was thinking, we don't really do smorgasbords anymore, so that's not really maybe not the most appropriate term, but
Well,
I think
that's a
people will know
very
what I'm
good
talking to.
point. That's a
Yeah.
very good point. Yeah. Yeah, my remembrance is always of smorgasbords was always that it's like, who has put their spoon into this, or somehow or another, it's like, do I really want to eat that?
Yes. Well, I've spent a lot of time over the years in group meditation retreats,
Oh,
eating
yes,
in
those are
that
fun.
style. And I can
Yes.
tell you who put the spoon here, there, or somewhere. It can be a very, very significant issue. So I'll come up for a different word for hub. We'll use your word hub instead of smorgasbord.
Yeah. Well, whatever. I mean, or it could be a smorgasbord, but you have somebody serving it on the behind, right? It just, which one do you want? I'll give you the scoop.
Yeah.
We'll make it more sanitary.
Yes. Well, fortunately, the online version of it is relatively sanitary. So
that's a very good point. Very good point.
There actually are no spoons. All there is the cursor and a click.
There you go. There you go. Yes. And lots of things to click on from what it sounds like.
Yeah, lots of things to click on.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Okay, well, I will again, I'll put the link to your website in the show notes, just so it's easy for everybody. And if there are any particular links you want for your podcast, obviously I can't list all of them, just like I don't list mine, all of them. So there may be, a main place where you'd like to send people. I don't know if you do video or just audio or
I just do audio, and there's a home page for the podcast before you break into episodes. So
perfect. That sounds good. You can send me that link as well.
Okay.
That would be great. And thank you very much. I really had a good time.
Yeah, thanks for the hour. It's been a pleasure chatting.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let me just say that, and we didn't really get into this, but I say this at the end of all of the podcasts. I'm not a doctor. This is not to be seen at all like medical advice, although there's really good advice in this. And if you're having any kind of a medical issue, please see your doctor or go to the emergency room. And other than that, I hope everyone is doing okay. I hope everyone, this probably won't be on before Christmas, but I will say hope you had a good holiday season. And I will talk to all of you next week.